They laughed at the black girl in the hall until she broke the bully's shoulder. What happens when an 8th grade girl steps between a bully and a boy with special needs? She didn't set out to be a symbol, but the school became a battleground for truth. What happened next shook the entire city to its core. There wasn't going to be a slow build here. Not in Mia Washington's world. See, life didn't hand out warm-up stretches or gentle reminders when you were a young black girl at Cedar Heights High. It just threw you headfirst into its mess, and you either held your ground or got steamrolled into the floor tiles. That morning started like any other, right up until the second reality kicked the door open and reminded Mia who had power in that school and who was expected to stay in the background like scenery. Cedar Heights had that polished suburb vibe, red brick buildings, banners with awkward smiles of overachieving students, all blonde and buttoned up, grinning like someone told them not to blink too hard. Everything was organized, sterile. They didn't like disruptions. They didn't like different. They especially didn't like black girls who weren't afraid to speak, think, or, God forbid, care too much. Mia Washington, she was all that and then some. And worse, for Cedar Heights, she actually gave a damn about people like Josh. Josh Berkeley, 6th grader, behavioral differences, eyes too honest for this world, eyes that saw you and asked for nothing but safety, the kind of kid who got left behind in cafeteria lines and pushed near stairwells. Every day, Mia walked him to lunch. She wasn't his aide, wasn't his sister, wasn't assigned by any teacher. She just did it because she knew what it felt like to walk through halls and have folks pretend not to see you. And because nobody else would, that day wasn't special. Same old scent of bleach and whatever sour smell clung to the lockers. It was 8:12 a.m. Bell had just rung. Mia walked to room 312 like she did every morning. Josh was there, backpack heavy, hands clenched. "Hey, Josh," she said, with that gentle tone she reserved for him. "Ready?" He nodded, slow, trusting. If you've ever seen a kid with autism trust you, you know, it's not casual. It's sacred. You hold it like glass in your hands. Mia slung his backpack over her shoulder. It nearly pulled her sideways, but she'd done it enough times not to flinch. They walked side by side, her chatting about SpongeBob like it was national news, him soaking it in, smiling with the corners of his mouth, until they reached the stairs. That's where they were waiting. Troy Bennett, 16, quarterback, son of a cop, white, tall, and just arrogant enough to think he owned the air around him. He wasn't just a bully. He was systemic bias with a Letterman jacket and a smirk. And behind him, his crew of future frat house misfires, already bored with the idea of kindness. "Yo!" Troy laughed, loud enough to bounce off the lockers. "If it isn't Black Mary Poppins and her pet robot," laughter, harsh, sharp, aimed like weapons. Josh froze. Mia stopped. Slowly, carefully, she turned her head. "Move," she said. No yelling, no panic, just clarity. Troy leaned forward, sneering. "What, always this spicy? Or just when you think TikTok's watching?" And then he shoved her. Not a big one, but enough to throw her off balance. Josh tripped, stumbled, fell to his knees. Troy turned, slapping his friends on the shoulders, laughing like he just delivered the punchline of the century. "Somebody film this. Super Nanny's about to cry." What clicked in Mia wasn't rage. It wasn't panic. It was focus. Like something slid into place. Like her whole life whispered, "Now." She helped Josh up, quiet, calm. His hand trembled in hers. She looked Troy dead in the eyes. "That's the last thing you do without consequence," she said. Her voice wasn't loud, but the silence around her made it echo. He laughed, short and stupid. "What was that, Angela Davis light?" And he lunged again. But here's the thing. Mia's mother had insisted she take Brazilian jiu-jitsu. "Because," she said, "this world ain't safe for black girls, and you might as well know how to fight pretty while you're at it." Troy didn't get far. One pivot, one clean motion. Her elbow found his shoulder socket with surgical precision. It wasn't brutal. It was science. He dropped like a sack of entitlement. He howled. "But you broke my shoulder." Mia didn't even blink. "I defended myself, and Josh." She turned to the boy who was now standing a little straighter. "Let's go." And they walked away. While Troy sat on the tile, red-faced and whimpering, looking like someone had unplugged his power supply. 10 minutes later, Mia was in the principal's office. Her mom, Karen, had been pulled from the ER mid-shift, dragged out like they were alerting the FBI about a national threat. She stormed in, still in scrubs, fury tucked behind her composure like a loaded pistol. "We have the footage," Principal Elderson said, lips tight, eyes already scanning for exits. There's evidence your daughter used physical force. Where's the part where he pushes her? Karen snapped. Where's the part where she gets insulted for helping a disabled kid? Or did your camera angle cut off just like your sense of fairness? Please, let's not make this a racial issue, Elderson tried. Oh, honey, Karen leaned in. This was racial the minute your school turned its back, while black kids got mocked in the hallways. Security Officer Barker, also white, also visibly sweating, spoke next. We'll need to suspend Mia temporarily until we investigate. Investigate what? Karen turned to him. Whether a girl has the right to not be assaulted in your hallways? Or are we waiting on Troy's daddy to fax in his badge and tell you how to spin this? Mia exhaled, low but firm. Mama, I got this. Karen looked at her daughter, and then quieter, prouder than she expected, said, You already had it, baby. Let them catch up. By 3 p.m., the video hit social media. First Snapchat, then TikTok. By dinner, it was trending on Twitter under hashtag Justice for Mia. The first wave of comments, predictable. Black girl attacks innocent white student. Violence isn't the answer. Where were the teachers? But then, something cracked. Parents began reposting. That's my daughter's friend. Mia walks with Josh every day. My son has autism. If someone protected him like this, I'd send them flowers for life. And then Josh's mom, she wrote, she didn't have to help him, but she did, every day. And now you call her a threat? While Principal Elderson pulled her blinds closed and rehearsed statements with legal counsel, Mia sat in her bedroom, hoodie on, fries in hand, eyes on the screen. She wore an old t-shirt that read, Protect Black Girls. She wasn't looking for fame. She wasn't asking for anyone's applause, but she knew, deep in her bones, that silence never protected anybody like her, not once. And now the whole world was watching. This story doesn't open with apologies, because no one ever offered one. Not the school, not the district, and certainly not to Mia Washington. According to them, she was too loud, too direct, too unapologetically black, as if courage was a crime and decency had a dress code that she clearly didn't pass. It all started at 8:57 a.m. when the first call came through to the principal's office. The voice on the line was smooth, practiced, radio professional. Local station WZKR, known for morning jazz, small-town traffic updates, and now apparently headlines that schools tried to bury. Good morning, the man said. We're looking for comment regarding the student being suspended for defending a disabled classmate from physical harm. The story's making rounds online. The secretary blinked, almost dropped the phone. Principal Elderson lunged for it like it was on fire. We don't comment on disciplinary matters, she said stiffly. Just to clarify, the host replied, voice still velvet, is that the school's official stance on an incident now circulating on social media involving a vulnerable student and a viral video? Click. Just like that, it was too late. Panic set in. The emails hit next. First from the Autism Parents Association, then from the local NAACP chapter, and finally the one they feared most, a request from WZKR's news department for an official statement in surveillance footage. That's when the calm, rehearsed poise of Principal Elderson cracked like porcelain, the kind of crack that spreads. Meanwhile, across town, Karen Washington was already on her fourth phone call of the morning. Her hands trembled, unusual for a woman who'd spent decades in trauma bays and ERs. But this wasn't surgery. This was her daughter, and this was war. They're trying to make her the aggressor, she told the lawyer on the other end. After years of telling her, stay calm, keep your head down, don't cause problems, and the one time she stands up, they act like she's the problem. Karen, her attorney said gently, you've got a case, not just for defense, for offense. At that same moment, Mia was sitting on the couch, watching herself on TV. It was surreal. The frozen frame of her grabbing Josh's hand, turning to face Troy, the exact moment her elbow moved and his pride hit the floor. There were already hundreds of comments below the video. She did what anyone should have done. Protecting a disabled kid shouldn't get you suspended. It should get you an award. Where was this girl when my autistic son was being bullied for years? And then the doorbell rang. Karen opened the door cautiously. A white woman stood there, mid-40s, hair pulled back, no makeup, no pretense, just nerves. I'm sorry to show up like this, she said. I'm Josh's mom. Can we come in? Inside, Josh sat on the edge of the couch, holding a book about dinosaurs. Mia sat beside him gently. You okay? She asked. He didn't meet her eyes, just nodded slowly, then whispered something. Are you coming back? She didn't answer right away. because honestly, she didn't know. "Do you want me to come back?" "Yes," he said, so quietly it barely registered. "No one else knows I'm scared of the stairs." Mia blinked, and her heart clenched in a way no school board ever could understand. The next morning, the school's usual calm suburban atmosphere was gone. A crowd had gathered by the front entrance. Not just students, pastors, activists, parents, even a former English teacher who'd been quietly let go 2 years earlier for challenging the curriculum. They weren't there for clout. They were tired. Tired of pretending Cedar Heights was fine. In the lobby stood Mia. Beside her, Karen, a few steps behind Josh and his mother. And then she walked forward, through that hallway, past those lockers, past the framed pictures of honor roll students and the Pride of Cedar Heights display. She wore a gray sweatshirt that read, "I'm not angry, I'm awake." The school board meeting was what you'd expect from a bureaucracy used to avoiding mirrors, wood-paneled formality, over-polished furniture, and underwhelming sincerity. The attorney from the district looked half asleep. Principal Elderson wore an expression curated by PR training. The man from the education department glanced around as though someone had dragged him away from a midweek tea time. "Ms. Washington," one of them began, "you understand the school has the authority to—" "I understand," Karen cut in, her voice low but sharp, "that you would have preferred my daughter let herself be pushed, let her classmate be mocked. You would have preferred neat, quiet compliance. But that's not how we raised her." "Well, this isn't about raising—" "Oh, I think it is," Karen said, her eyes steady. "She stood up. And what did your system do? It tried to break her." Then Mia rose, not dramatically, not loudly, just calmly. "You want me to apologize?" she asked. "Fine, I'm sorry. I'm sorry I didn't let myself be humiliated. I'm sorry I protected someone you ignored. I'm sorry I'm not your quiet black girl who smiles when she's supposed to and disappears when she's told." Silence, not awkward, not tense, just that deep, hollow quiet that fills a room when the truth shows up uninvited. Outside the meeting room, in the hallway where it all began, Mia leaned against the wall. "Mama," she whispered, "you think people are really behind us?" Karen pulled her into an embrace, kissed her temple. "Baby, they already are. You just haven't seen how far your voice carries yet." By noon, the clip of Mia's speech was climbing to 1 million views. On Twitter, she was hailed as a modern-day Simone Baldwin. On Facebook, a flood of teachers, parents, and students joined the hashtag number #IStandWithMia. Stories poured in. Students who'd been bullied, parents who'd been ignored, voices that had been silenced. And for the first time in a very long time, a sleepy suburban school was forced to stop and listen. CBS aired a segment that evening. Not a fluff piece, a serious report with real questions, real context. By sunset, the district announced it would pause all disciplinary actions pending internal review. But let's be honest, they weren't reviewing. They were retreating, because for the first time they weren't looking at just a student, they were looking at a storm, and it had a name: Mia. The day Mia Washington returned to Cedar Heights wasn't special in the traditional sense. The halls didn't greet her with flowers. The lockers didn't glow with welcome. No staff stood with a banner reading, "We were wrong." In fact, the walls looked exactly the same: dull, grayish tan, slightly scuffed. But if you listened closely, really listened, you could feel something had shifted. Those walls had heard her name. They whispered it now, even at night, long after the fluorescent lights had gone dark. Because Mia wasn't just that girl anymore. She was the echo they couldn't shut off. As she walked through the front lobby, everything slowed. The air tensed. Students hushed mid-sentence. A few looked away. Guilt. Others stared too long. Curiosity. A few locked eyes. Respect, mixed with something else. Something like fear. Because Mia had done what no one else had dared. She stood up, but that was just the warm-up. By third period, things got interesting. The biology class was dragging its way through a paragraph so dry it could have cracked if you sneezed. The teacher's voice, soft and uncertain, barely survived the whir of the overhead fan. Then, 3 sharp knocks on the classroom door. Everyone turned. The teacher opened it and froze, her face drained to chalk. Then she turned to Mia. "Mia Washington, the principal's office." Immediately, someone in the back muttered, "Didn't even last a day." Mia rose silently, not because she was nervous, but because she knew this wasn't a routine hallway walk. Something was coming. Only this time it wasn't Principal Elderson behind the desk. There were 3 men waiting, one in a gray suit with a Cedar Valley District lapel pin, another with a laminated badge and a laptop. The third, tall, black, glasses, a notebook so thick it looked like it held congressional secrets. Mia, the man in the suit said, motioning toward a chair. Have a seat. We'd like to show you something. They clicked play. The screen filled with footage. Her speech, the City Hall forum, her words clear and certain. The applause, the silence that followed, the look on faces that weren't used to being challenged. That was from last night, he said. The parents' forum. Your word, they moved people, added the man with the badge. A lot of people. Then the third man stepped forward. We want you to speak again, at the citywide youth forum. This time, on your terms. Mia blinked. You want me to talk? No, the suited man said. We want people to listen. They held it in the city library, the old one, marble steps, stained glass skylight, the smell of worn pages and weighty truth. It wasn't glamorous, but it was honest. And somehow it fit. They came in waves, mothers holding coffee like armor, teachers with tote bags and tired eyes, young activists with notebooks and fury, veterans in crisp jackets. They didn't know what to expect from a 14-year-old girl in sneakers. But they came. Mia stepped up to the mic. No trembling, no hesitations. She stood still, let the moment settle. My name is Mia Washington, she began. I'm an 8th grader. Yes, I'm the girl from the video. But before that, I'm a person. She spoke about Josh, about the hallway, about what it meant to be looked at, not as a student, but as a threat, not as a child, but a disruption. She explained that her crime, apparently, was having the courage to say no. You all tell kids, be brave, stand up, defend others. But when we do it, you try to silence us. Why? The room went silent. One woman lowered her head. A man pulled off his glasses and wiped his eyes. Even the walls seemed to lean in. The next day, Cedar Heights started to look different. Not in banners or press releases, but in students. Those same kids who once leaned against lockers chewing gum and posting TikToks. Now they were forming peace patrols, student-led teams walking with younger kids to lunch, escorting them through those same corridors Mia once defended. Posters popped up, your voice is louder than fear. Mia's not the exception, she's the standard. The administration tried to ignore it. They issued no statement, no mention in morning announcements, just business as usual. But change doesn't need a press release. That afternoon at a school board meeting, a man stood up, dark-skinned, barrel-chested, silver hair, steady voice, retired police sergeant, father, veteran. You know what you did? He asked the board. You gave these kids something you never meant to, a real example. And if you try to snuff it out, you won't just lose students. You'll lose this town. They couldn't look him in the eye. Then came the real moment, a live-streamed school press conference. Principal Elderson, pressed blazer and all, standing at the podium. The event was supposed to restore clarity and rebuild community trust. Every word had been combed by lawyers. But right before the cameras rolled, Mia walked in. Not invited, not expected, but entirely welcome. She didn't speak. She just sat in the front row. Elderson glanced down, then stammered. We've always encouraged inclusion and respectful dialogue. A voice from the back. Is that before or after you called it a provocation on video? Laughter, applause. Elderson flushed. And then, something nobody saw coming. A white board member, elderly, usually silent, slowly rose. I was wrong, he said. We all were. Mia, you aren't just a student. You're a teacher. After that, no one said the word suspension again. Now they talked about policy reviews, about equity programs, about mandatory staff training in racial dynamics. Mia watched it all, calmly. She wasn't fooled. She knew this wasn't the end. It was the beginning. That evening, she sat on the roof with her mother. The sun was low. The streets hummed below like a distant radio. You proud of me? Mia asked. Karen looked at her daughter, serious, strong, unsilenced. I'm proud you didn't let the world make you quiet. Because, baby, you weren't just yelling. You were telling the truth. And now this town, this country, this whole loud, complicated world, it had no choice but to listen. At Cedar Heights, nobody dared call her the girl from the video anymore. Not because the name had disappeared, but because her full name now sat on everyone's tongue like something sacred, something untouchable. Even the freshmen who didn't know their homeroom teacher's name knew hers. Mia Washington wasn't a student. Not anymore. She was a mirror, a movement, a full-blown interruption to the comfort of those who'd gotten by relying on other people's silence. But here's the truth. She never asked for any of it. She didn't wake up that morning thinking, today I'll be a symbol. She didn't seek headlines. She didn't want awards. All she wanted was to get Josh safely to lunch, like she'd done 100 times before. Everything else, That was the system's reaction to someone doing the right thing without permission. They tried to contain the story, officially, quietly, with carefully worded emails and hastily called press conferences. They rolled out new transparency initiatives and shiny policy PDFs as if a redesigned document could erase the video, erase the hallway, erase the way they'd tried to break her down when all she'd done was stand up. But this city wasn't in the mood to forget, because while they polished statements, Mia kept doing what she had always done, being herself. In her English class, she started something called the Quiet Voices. No cameras, no banners, no adults making it into a photo op, just students. The ones who'd been bullied, who'd been ignored, who'd been told to get over it. A safe room where people could speak, or cry, or just sit without pretending. One girl finally said out loud what had been whispered for years, that she'd been shoved into lockers since 6th grade and nobody noticed. Another boy talked about his short story being ignored by a teacher because it was too focused on urban issues. And then there was the quietest of them all, a skinny boy with shoulders like folded wings and eyes that looked at the floor more than people. He whispered, "I'm gay, and I'm scared all the time." Mia looked right at him, not shocked, not theatrical, just real. "Don't be scared," she said. "You're not alone anymore." A month after the incident, an envelope arrived. Not a summons, not a warning, an invitation. From the Cedar Valley School District to Mia Washington, recipient of the Youth Leader of the Year award. Karen nearly dropped her phone, and she made a decision right there in the kitchen, halfway through peeling carrots. "You're wearing the red dress," she said. Mia wrinkled her nose. "The bright one?" "Yes," Karen said, "because that color says, I'm here and I'm not apologizing for it." So on the night of the ceremony, Mia stood on a small stage in a big dress. Cameras flashed. The mayor, who had pretended not to know her name a month ago, now smiled like he'd raised her himself. "We are proud of young Mia," he said, the microphone almost trembling in his hand. "She is an example of what courage looks like in our community." Mia nodded, not because she agreed, but because she understood the game. When they handed her the mic, the whole room leaned forward. "I'm grateful," she began. "Grateful that people are finally listening. But I'll tell you what I'm most thankful for, being tested. Because in that moment, when I was pushed, I found out how much strength I had." She paused. "And let me be clear, I am not your poster. I am not your photo op. I am a student who wants to learn without fear. I want to walk down a hallway and not worry about being punished for existing too boldly. And I shouldn't have to be perfect to deserve protection." Her eyes locked with the mayor's. "I'm not your display case. I'm your reminder that silence no longer works." After the ceremony, they brought her into the media room. Rows of chairs, bottled water, tripods, reporters. But there was someone else waiting. Someone she never expected. Troy Bennett. No cast. No cameras on him. Just him, standing awkwardly in the corner, hands stuffed into his pockets like he was trying to hide. I wanted to talk," he mumbled. She didn't move. "No," she said simply. "I just wanted to—" "Stop," Mia cut in. "You didn't want to talk when it mattered. You wanted control. You wanted to be the one people laughed with, not at. And now you want forgiveness because your reputation feels fragile?" Silence. Real silence. The kind that makes a clock tick louder. "I'm not a saint, Troy. I don't forgive for sport. But I'm also not your enemy. I just have better things to do than think about you." He nodded and walked out. She stayed. A week later, Mia was back in the hallways. No media, no buzz, just fluorescent lights and foot traffic. She walked past the lockers, past the trophy case, and then she saw it. A new student. Small, eyes wide, shoulders tense. A senior boy stood too close. "Hey," he smirked. "You lost, little girl?" Mia didn't stop walking. She stopped next to them. "You give tours now?" she asked the boy, voice even. He turned, saw her, stepped back. "No? Then maybe step away." He muttered something and disappeared down the hall. The new girl looked up, stunned. You're that girl." Mia smiled just a little. "No," she said. "I'm the girl who doesn't stay quiet anymore." That night, Mia sat at her desk. Homework half finished, phone buzzing. But she wasn't checking social media. She was writing. The prompt, "What does it mean to be part of a community?" She wrote, "To be in a community means being in a place where, when someone falls, you don't just keep walking. You stop. You help. You speak. Even if your voice shakes. Even if it's a girl's voice. Even if it's a black girl's voice. Because silence never saved anyone. But the truth just might." The world didn't change overnight. The school bells still rang too loud. The lockers still stuck. Some teachers still confused the names of the black kids in class. But something had shifted, and now when Mia walked through the hallway, nobody laughed. They listened.